engage everybody at once.
Gonna get this started. Some good chit chat.
Focus on something that the parents can get involved in. So I think it really bridges that gap that's pretty common between coaches and players and parents, and it's really important to do. So that's good to hear.
I agree, and it's for the parents. It's more so that because we do it I meant to come on this morning, but I had too many fires at work this morning, so I wasn't able to. But the parents get to actually sit back and never cook on Tuesdays. And one of the stipulations is that they have to drink wine or whatever beverage they want to drink while they watch the boys cook. So
I brought it up with my wife because she hasn't been feeling well lately. So finally, I've had to do some cooking.
yeah.
And I don't know about husbands or fathers in this era and how many of them help out at home, but my wife, she's been home all her life raising the three girls we had. I never did anything except coach.
Yeah.
Football, wrestling, and track in high school. Derek was one of my track athletes, and
not very fast, I heard.
Yeah. Well, he was the fastest guy in the province, as far as I knew at that time, and he had he was a pretty good athlete back in the day. I don't know if he dares challenge anybody on your team to a race because you might pull a muscle, but I wouldn't bet on anybody else beating him, even though there might be a little age difference. So.
Yeah, well, he challenges me, and I tell him that that's probably not a good idea. I don't want to embarrass him.
Well, you could probably beat him in a chug-a-lug.
that we could do for sure. Sure.
I saw one of the boys smile. I don't know if they would chug-a-lug one like we used to, but it's a different era these days. So.
Yeah, it sure is. Oh, I'm hearing my horn going off downstairs. I must have missed the goal. So it'll be 2-0 for the Jets, I believe.
Then again, who cares?
So I'm just going to, we got a couple of guys that messaged me that they were going to be a little bit late, so they wanted me to apologize, Wally. They don't mean any disrespect by that.
Yep.
But we're going to have, like I told you, we do, which is a program that I kind of stole from one of our friends that plays in the National League in Switzerland, and they do Storytime Fun Fact Fridays with their team in Lugano. And so here we do Storytime Fun Fact Thursday. So each player has to find a fun fact and send it in to our captain, which is Doust on the line there. And we're going to start things off by having him read the fun fact for today.
All right, so we had Bucky today.
Okay.
So below the ocean's surface is a mysterious world that accounts for over 95% of Earth's living space. It could hide 20 Washington monuments stacked on top of each other. But the deep sea remains largely unexplored. As he dives down through this vast living space, he noticed that light starts to fade rapidly. By 650 feet, all the light is gone to our eyes and the temperature has dropped dramatically. Dive deeper and the weight of the water above continues to accumulate to a massive crushing force. Any light still filtering down has diminished to appear completely black, leaving only animals and bacteria that produce the light found here. By 13,000 feet, which is 4,000 meters, the temperature hovers just below the temperature of your refrigerator. At this depth, we've reached the average depth of the sea floor, a place that may start to get a little muddy. The further we dive down from the surface, the less new food is available, making the fight to survive that much more challenging. Despite these harsh conditions, there is life, an astounding variety of creatures that will boggle your mind. You can't dive to the deep ocean on your own, of course, but scientists have a variety of sophisticated technologies to explore this vast frontier. That's your fact for today, boys.
Nice. Good job, Bucky.
All right.
Bucky's not in here yet, so waiting for him. So that's our Storytime Fun Fact Thursday, where we normally would have the players sitting in the dressing room, and they'd hear that story in there, and the coaches would go because we do enjoy them. So just something else that we do to keep the boys busy. And I don't know. I can't remember how many Zoom meetings we were doing a week, guys, but I think we were at 5 at one point there, right before Christmas break. So we got your girl beat. We do quite a few Zoom meetings, and everybody stays engaged. So, that being said, you guys all saw the post for that John Curtin posted about Wally, as far as everything, all his accomplishments and everything he's done. Yeah. Okay. Chewy, turn your mic off, buddy. So I'm not going to get into huge detail as far as I mean, Wally has got such an extensive history with hockey, and is probably is the most technical hockey guy that I know. And Wally and I have had our dealings throughout the years. For my 20 years I've lived in the area, and when I reached out to Wally to see if he could come talk to you guys, he didn't hesitate. So, Wally, I'm going to let you, you're going to give yourself the best introduction, I feel, but maybe talk a bit about your past with hockey and Team Canada and Hockey of Excellence and all that stuff.
Okay. I'm a pretty old guy, so I've been around a long time, but I'll just let the kids know. Back in my day, I played hockey in small town Saskatchewan. Now, I was a first generation Canadian. What that means is my parents, my dad, he escaped the regime in the Soviet Union. He got out of there as a 20-year-old, saved enough money in the coal mines in Estevan, Saskatchewan, went home and got married and came back again. And he had 3 boys, and he brought his wife over 6 months after the second trip back because there was some trouble with immigration and all the things, but rowed the boat across the ocean and we were all born in Macklin, Saskatchewan, near the border, and my father was a shoemaker, uneducated. I think he might have had the equivalent of a grade 3 education, and it takes a lot of, pardon the English, balls to leave a country and leave home at that age. But he knew what was going on politically, and it wasn't very good over there, and he dared to come over. And when I worked at Hockey Canada, I received an award a few years before I left Hockey Canada for my service over a number of years, and I really, the role of hockey in my life was so impactful. I wouldn't be speaking to you today, and I always imagine, what if I stayed there, was born there, and raised there? The opportunities here. And hockey in small town Saskatchewan, life, not just hockey. We did everything. I played all school sports. I was in drama class. I sang in choirs and that kind of thing. And I grew up playing all sports growing up. And in the end, hockey was sort of the savior because my mother got quite sick and was home periodically and then she'd go into the hospital again. But she managed in my years in high school to be home stable, happy, and healthy. All that time, life wasn't easy growing up. My father was a shoemaker. We lived on Main Street in Wadena, Saskatchewan, 1,100 people. And we were poor, never had a car. I grew up in an outhouse era, and hand-me-down skates. I had 2 brothers older. The oldest one was probably the best of the 3 of us at hockey, and I was the one who happened to luck out growing up with the good hand-me-downs, playing at one time as a 15-year-old on 4 different age group teams, including the senior team. So I just can't emphasize how important a small community and knowing the troubles that my father was having in a small community, I was raised by the people in that community, and they knew what was going on, and it wasn't easy. So my addiction to the sport occurred. I really took an attraction to the Russians, and I hitchhiked and watched the Russians play the CIS All-Stars in Saskatoon Arena, which is no longer existing. And I remember seeing it because they were so good and moved the puck so well. I discovered I needed eyeglasses because I couldn't follow the puck. And they were that good. I really respected them. And then I fell in love with the college teams because I watched the national team and followed them. And it led to me getting a tryout, playing there for 1 year. And that year was just so important. But I got to go to university, get a couple degrees, play with the national team, and then, wow, I got an invitation to Chicago's camp. That was back in an era where you might not even know the names of Stan Mikita and Bobby Hull, but it was just 1967, a long time ago, but it was the year of Expo, which was the World's Fair. I remember it like it was yesterday in the old Chicago Stadium and going to a tryout with only, I think, 35 bodies there. So it included the roster plus their best kids from their farm team and two of us that were amateurs. So what an experience. I played in the organization for a year in the International League, Flint, Michigan. And having played with the national team, I was a pretty good player. I felt I could compete at a higher level than the league I was playing in. And I really enjoyed my year in the International League. But I didn't have I was educated. I had 2 degrees. And if I couldn't get a contract in the Central League, the next league before the NHL, I decided my wife was expecting, and if I'd stayed there and played hockey at that league, I would have been an alcoholic. And it's very interesting because right now the stories, and I just exchanged stories with a coach in the American League that said he referred to assistant coaches and coaches in that league as having the same problem. And I realized if I was going to choose something to do in life, it had to be, if I couldn't play in the highest league possible, I had a couple degrees, so I was almost too educated to sacrifice my life. And I was worried about my own self-discipline to control my behaviors because I was one of those guys who liked to be a part of the team. So I went back, got a job in Calgary. I played 1 year, couldn't get a contract in the league above, so I got a job in Calgary, played senior hockey, ended up teaching high school for 25 years, and I went back to what I think I was born to do, which was teach and coach.
Just so you all know, he taught Dunner.
Yeah. I remember coaching them. I don't remember teaching them, but I found that coaching was it was just the best place to be, especially in a school setting, because I don't think kids that played sports like school as much as they liked sports that they were playing at the school. Back in the day, you could play AAA and AA hockey and go to school. So I had players on the football team that were playing the equivalent of a AAA midget hockey. And one of them was my quarterback and captain. He graduated, went on, and he became a policeman, and he eventually became the second in command with the Calgary Police Force. And he's presently working for the RCMP as an advisor. But I just think the attachment of being into sports is doing the best thing for you. The sport and getting to the show and being in the limelight, to me, was something that you've got to learn to handle if you're going to do that. You've got to appreciate your choices and what you're going to try to do. So just encourage everybody here to respect what you're doing in school and to stay active and play sports. And if you can keep playing when you're Derek's age and Coach's age, then we've done your job as minor hockey coaches. So, you know, my story's so amazing. I could talk about just about anything, and it's quite amazing. I've got as many stories about my sports school coaching experiences and the lessons I've learned, but I think they're more suited to a coach's audience. But hockey-wise, I think there's some things from coaching hockey here. I had 3 daughters. I coached them in minor sports growing up and in track and field growing up in high school. In the high school I taught at, which was Father Lacombe in Northeast Calgary. And that really got me kick-started because we won a number of city football championships, and guys like Derek won gold medals in track, and my own daughter won, not a big girl, but I could teach and coach pretty well. And she was like 5'6" and 130 pounds, but she won discus, javelin, and shot provincials, gold medal in those 3 categories. So technically she was an athlete, and she wanted to play hockey. There was no female hockey, so she played ringette, won a national championship, and did play for me when I coached a number of national team girls at the Olympic Oval. When I finished teaching, took early retirement, I got connected with women's hockey. It was quite amazing how that all happened. It's just another story. But let me tell you, you guys are fortunate, because if your coaches coach female hockey, they might never go and guys again, because the girls want to know why. What you doing? Why are you doing it? And the girls care for each other. They're a different kind of animal when it comes to what they want to get out of an experience. They really care about each other more, to the point where they'd rather not take your ice time and they'd rather see you go out. And guys like to be told what to do, and they'll do it. You point the way, you can bark at them and yell them and they'll take it, but not so much in today's generation. But boy, back in our day, there was a lot of abuse. And I was just fortunate I got involved in the female team, because all this time working at Hockey Canada voluntarily, working with the national men's team in '88 as a skills coach, I got opportunities on the female side to coach Team Japan. And I worked with head coach the Team Japanese women in the '98 Olympics in Nagano. That was an amazing experience, and it all came about because when I retired, I took over the Olympic Oval female team that Shannon Miller was coaching at the time, and I was doing high-performance coach evaluations for Hockey Alberta, and she was the person I had to follow. So we got quite close, and I worked with her, giving her accreditation for high-performance coaching. She got the job to coach the '98 Olympic team, and when she started the Oval program, she asked me to run it for her in her absence. So what an opportunity. And I'd like to share a story about coaching in Japan on the guys' side. Initially, when I went over, Dave King, who coached the national men's team that existed as like a professional team under Hockey Canada back at the time, he had a good relationship with the International Ice Hockey Federation and the Japanese. So he asked me, knowing he was coaching the Flames at the time, they asked him to help with the Olympics in preparation. So I went over there on his behalf. I don't know where Derek was at the time, but I had to take, I would go on for 5 weeks, come home for 10 days. I took a leave of absence from teaching to evaluate their hockey program and sort of advise them preparing for the Olympics from 1995 to 1998. And this story is amazing, but what a lesson to me. First ice time with the national men's team, I start with a scrimmage. I just want to watch them play. Shinny. And I'm watching these skilled guys. Boy, they were skilled. But I didn't know what the hell they were doing. They had chances to score, and they never shot. They passed, and they just never made any sense at all. And so I could only take it for about 12 minutes, and I blew the whistle, brought them all to the goal net, told the goalie to move out, and I said, look in the net, what's missing? And there wasn't a puck in the net. And I said, what are you guys doing? You should pass, you don't pass, you should shoot, you don't shoot. And the translator taps me on the shoulder, and he said, Kozak-san, that's what they call you, your last name with "on" after it, which is sort of a respectful way of greeting a Kozak friend. They must pass to the older player. And I said, what? He said, senpai kohai. And that's culture in Japan. In society in Japan, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how bright you are, how good you are. The guy that makes the decision is going to be the oldest guy. So you got to pass to that player when you're on the line. And their line combinations, when I got there, were set up with all the 40-year-olds for the first line, and maybe the 35, 36-year-olds the second line, and the 32, 31-year-old the third line. The fourth line were 30 or 31. The best players weren't even dressed. They were doing foot rubs because they were supposed to pass to the older player. And I said to myself, you're going to go to the Olympics with that philosophy? I said, oh, they got something to learn. So that experience, you go to a country and play, and I know you were talking about Lugano and the coach that you started that Fun Fact Friday share. Every country is different. So wherever you go to play in Europe, if you do go there, and have the opportunity to play. And I've set up kids to go over play in Division III that play Junior B hockey, that got married starting hockey programs there. And they're still living there today, and they're having a good life over everything. So don't underestimate the ability to stay involved in the game at any level and give back to it. But we've got so much to learn about the world. Hockey's a pretty small part of it, and I really realized that when I went over there. So that's the Japanese story that you suggested I bring up and talk about. And I don't know where to start when it comes to storytelling, because my greatest playing experience was the national team in 1969-70. And I don't know if the kids would remember the 72 series, but I know that Derek would, because this is when when I played with the national team, there was only 6 NHL teams. And the national team was run by Father Bauer, and he recruited student athletes. And I went to try out in Winnipeg. There was a national team, a second team in Ottawa, everybody there, I think, could have played in the NHL, but they wanted to get an education at the same time. And back in that day, they didn't really care about your education. They just wanted you, and like a piece of meat, they wanted you. They could trade you and give you a contract that, wow, you would be embarrassed looking at the one I signed when I played in Chicago's minor team in the organization. And it wasn't that the money was bad relative to the time, but the conditions were unbelievable. So having to play for Father Bauer for that 1 year, and I was trying out for the Olympic team, and I have to be honest with you, I was a good player, but I was the first cut on that team. That's how good they were, and I knew how good they were. Because when we played exhibition games at the beginning of the year against NHL teams, we won as much as we lost, and I felt, wow, we were good. In fact, we were better than most teams. They looked at a lot of the younger players, and it was exhibition games. But I knew how good the national team was, but I knew how good the Russians were and the Czechs were because we got to play against them. And in 1972, the year after I played, the professional NHL took over and brought in the Montreal Voyageurs, which is the number one farm team of the Montreal Canadiens. And they created that team to try out with the national team, all paid professionals. And they did keep, I think, 8 of the guys that were on the national team. I wasn't one of them, to play with the Voyageurs. And they were going to go to the World Championships or go to the Olympics, but they never got approved. So that meant the end of it. And then expansion occurred. And so that's where I went to the farm team and thought, gee, I might have a chance. But to make a small story short, the national team, it was for student athletes, created by a gentleman who had a real understanding of the importance of the sport and the ideals of the Olympics. It's not about the Stanley Cup and the dollars and the bucks and the winning and the losing. It's just about play a game and give it your all and learn from playing. And I really live that philosophy when I coach school sports and even when I work with coaches today. So it's really quite experience to go through, is going from being a player with a dream and wanting to play. And I have to admit, I really didn't have a belief or a dream. And I think that came from coming over from the old country with the first generation father who had a grade 3 education. And I remember getting my degree at the University of Saskatchewan, and he came with my mother to the convocation ceremony. And I remember talking to him after the convocation ceremony with tears in his eyes and in broken English saying, Sonny, I'm so pleased. He had tears rolling down his cheeks. I never taught you would ever get an education, because he couldn't get one. So that's why I regarded education as a priority in my life, growing up in a family without it. And all 3 of us achieved in whatever we chose to do. And my oldest brother was a school teacher. He's since passed on. And my middle brother, who's older than me, became a pretty popular radio announcer over 30 years. And he's been retired into a Hall of Fame in Western Canadian broadcasting. But we've all got good lives going, and I'm still doing things I think that are making a difference. So what I got out of my hockey experience, because of my connection with the national team, is just becoming a better person and helping everybody else become better at what they do. And when Derek mentioned to me, you can't play hockey right now, you can't play games, he said, the thing with your parents, how many teams include the parents and they get to witness coaches trying to make you come together. And from what Derek's mentioned to me, the team building that's occurred this year is beyond anything. And Coach, you've been asked by the association to run it with all the teams.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you if I can be included in listening in on the next session to see what you do. Because when the association calls a coach and tells them to do that exercise with everybody, the buy-in they've been told about the value of it. The unity of the organization, them recognizing the value of that experience, that's what destroys minor hockey. Everybody gets in it for the wrong reason, for winning, for getting to the NHL, and it becomes a shit show. So,
yeah, and I agree with you 100% on that, and part and parcel to why we're getting the buy-in just from our own team is like the culture in this Zoom call right now, the culture in our dressing room and this team on and off the ice. Without the boys' buy-in, then we're not successful. I mean, I'm sure there's teams out there that they don't want to have these Zoom calls, they don't want to get together, but the character and the culture in this room is like none I've ever seen before. So that's a big part of it, Wally.
Yeah. No, that's really value, and I'll call you about next Tuesday, and you know what you might do, and every Thursday morning we have a group of people like myself that have coached national teams, coached NHL teams, women and men, as a broad audience of experienced hockey people dedicated to the good of the game, and we just talk hockey. Today we had a 3-hour session, and I recorded it, and what I do during the week is I'll edit parts of the session and send it to coaches. But we spent a lot of our time, we talked about the Oilers, we talked about captains, good choices, bad choices, and one of them, a principal of a school, he chimes in with us, in and out. He shared, I'm going to edit what he shared about article he read on captains, and as well, he evaluated a teacher today on teaching using the Socrates message, which is asking questions, not telling and not yelling. And it's ahead of the curve stuff. And I talked to Derek about it already on the phone about this methodology of coaching is players, we tell them what to do, and right now I'm doing all the talking. I don't know if they're listening. I don't know if they're engaged, but when you ask anybody a question, they got to listen, and you got to listen to the answer. And what this teacher did with grade 2 kids was absolutely amazing. I was educated like a robot to memorize and score a high score, and I think some of the kids are in the middle of final exams now if you're in a semester. I only see one player's face on there, but is that true? They're preparing for finals, and I don't know how much memorization goes into that, but there was no thinking when I went to school. It was all memorizing. And
you're only seeing one picture, Wally?
Yeah.
If you go into the top right corner, you can change that to a gallery view, and you'll see everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, you should see a little thing in the top right.
Oh, good. I can see some names here. Now I can pick out a name and put you on the spot, so you got to listen.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know Derek might have heard a lot of these stories before and yourself, and I don't know if the kids are that interested in those stories. They're interesting for me and for adults, and I get excited talking about it. But I'd ask the kids, is there anything that intrigues you about the stories? And I can continue with stories, but I'd rather talk about questions you might have, knowing what I've been through, how I've grown up, and I've mentored coaches in organizations like the Northeast and the Royals Association. I've worked with them and worked with kids, and I've seen the changes. I know the difference between the stress of midget AAA, because everybody that plays AAA thinks they're going to go to the show, and their parents are forcing them to do it. And sometimes coaches only shorten the bench and play the best players and don't give a chance for other players to develop. I had that talk with Derek because I watched a novice team he was sort of a part of that did that with 8-year-old players to the degree that you wouldn't dare even do it with a pro team. It was amazing. And I'm saying, when do kids learn if they don't get to play and they don't get to develop and play all situations? So I'm sort of caught up in what I call a mission statement exercise for coaches and parents to understand you got to let the kids develop, not just hockey, by playing them and teaching all of them like they're valued. But you got to develop the life skills to be the person you can be. You don't have the life skills, you're not going to go anywhere in hockey. And if you don't have the life skills, you might have a very difficult time in the real working world. Because society is becoming a little more open and engaging and listening to its employees, people that are sort of sub-management, assistant managers, not just managers, and CEOs of companies. So when you go for a job interview, the biggest thing that's going to be your credential, you played hockey. Because you're on a team, and when you go to work, you're on a team. You're going to work with people, you got to get along with people. And it's no different. The best teams win championships, not the best players. That's why this team building is so valuable, and I think I might be able to convince Hockey Canada to make it a team building thing for every team and every association where the kids can cook. I got a question for the kids about that activity.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many of you had to have help from your mothers as you did it? Put your hands up if you can. Quite a few? I told my wife about it, and I never cooked anything all my life. In fact, I was a bit of a dipstick at home. I was away coaching 7 in the morning, getting home 10 at night. I didn't do anything at home. All my life, I never did anything. And now I'm sort of semi-retired. I'm at home all the time. And I'm trying to find something to do that's of use at home. And I talked to her about this, and she said, I said that, the parents sit there and have a glass of wine, and she looked at me and said, are you kidding me? So that's what I wondered about, is the moms are taking to it pretty good and appreciating it for the most part. I'm just curious about what the kids think of that relative to their parents and how they regard it. Any feedback there? Johnny, for instance, I see a name, Johnny Turton. The other names have disappeared. So
Johnny's one of the parents. He does. We actually video this and put it onto our
Super.
Facebook page. So, but somebody will fire up here. What do you guys think? Both cooking.
No, yeah, Mom loves it when she gets home from work there, and I'm already starting to cook dinner for her. So.
Yeah, and Reed's actually been one of our instructors one of the nights.
Yeah. How many kids are there left to do this?
Quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah, and we started off with the coaches, Wally.
Yeah.
And just kind of turned it into an every Tuesday thing, which we plan on, when we get back to playing hockey this year, we plan on continuing the Tuesday night stuff here as well, as best we can, depending on our schedules.
Yeah.
But, you talk about, keeping the kids engaged and the things that we can do to grow as a team. And I mean, we did all the things in the beginning, where we went on how long was that hike, boys? Am I lying when I say it was 15K?
It took forever.
Yeah, around that.
It took all day, for sure.
So it took an all-day hike, and then, of course, our community initiative, Wally, this year everybody does volunteering at the Airdrie Food Bank and things like that, or turkey bowls. And I really wanted to find something stronger for the kids. And we've actually paired up with Airdrie Angels in Airdrie. And every one of the boys are all paired up with a senior couple that owns a home that can't shovel their driveways and sidewalks. So every time it snows, these boys all have somebody that they take care of. So it's there. When I say that the culture and the character in this room is huge, it is.
Yeah. Well, that idea of getting somebody to shovel your walk, I don't know if the kids know, but I had a heart attack in 2007. I wasn't supposed to live. I was given a 2% chance of living. And it happened on the ice with a bunch of national team players, women. I was running the ice time. And I collapsed. There's a history of heart history in my family. And because I collapsed on the ice, my body was somewhat frozen. And I was rushed to emergency where the Peter Lougheed Hospital happened to have an instrument there for 3 weeks that froze your body with a tube anally with cold fluids that saved my brain so I could still function. I was in a coma for 4 days, and they didn't know whether I would live or die or be a vegetable living or functional living. And my wife was told by the specialist to expect me, if I lived at home, to need an extreme amount of care, and I would never have a chance of returning to work. And it was amazing because it's almost like I got a reason I've stayed alive for a reason. And I went back to Hockey Canada, still tried to work with the national team, but I worked on hockey sense things and curriculum for development and program of excellence in the boys and the girls side. And really, I'm just as much into it today. Like our Skype meeting this morning with these coaches, boy, we've broken down the new things that are happening in the NHL. Unbelievable, the deception and the thinking that goes on in the game. And we had a coach, a father coach from Massachusetts on this morning, coaching his 8-year-old son. And I'm not sure you guys can't practice, but Sean, I've always wanted to experiment with visual learning. And boy, I'd like nothing more than a session with these guys experimenting with one video clip. And what do you see? And playing it over and over, and everybody getting a chance to see what do you like, and sharing that. You got
an opportunity.
Yeah. And then I asked them, okay, you like the offensive things, you might have liked some defensive things, but for every good offensive thing, there's a breakdown. And I don't know that I would do with the kids. I'd stay with offense here, but with the national team players, I do that. I never did this exercise. I dreamed about it. Once a week, one clip of your great plays, so you feel pumped from your great play, your team. But then looking at the other team and what they could have done better. Not what you could have done better, what they could have done better. Yeah. So you're not dwelling on your mistakes or breakdowns. And that's a visual learning thing. Well, anyway, this dad of his 8-year-old son, we're wondering about how he's using the time. Their kids looked at 4 NHL highlights, and he said the kids pointed stuff out, like looking one way, a passing another, shoulder checking. 7 and 8-year-olds, they're practicing in their minds. You don't have to go on the ice. And it's the old Russian coach that coached back in my day. He's called the pioneer of hockey in the Soviet Union. More important than the speed of foot and speed of hand is the speed of mind. And that's what this asking is all about here. You ask a question, you got to think. So I asked the group a question about their, cooking, and I got one answer and a share on it. But when you look at that video, and the question is, what did you like? What did you appreciate most? And then when you have to look at, well, what did you learn from it that might have been better for the other team? You are starting to think. And it's the same way as coaching. And Derek brought this up with me, that he has been doing something like this in another way, but it engages the players. So this is more for coaches than players. But how many of you guys have had coaches, and put your hands up, that you would call yellers? So you had yellers, eh? How many have you had coaches that were tellers? So yellers are tellers. They're bad tellers. And tellers, that's most coaches today. They tell you what to do. Well, I'm saying to them, you don't tell players anymore. At your age, you got a power play. You know what to do. You know the structure. But can you read and react within it and execute? Or are you thinking about, what does the coach want? And even at the NHL level, I talked to one of the Flames staff, one of their assistant coaches in Stockton is on the Skype call. And I asked him, he had the leading power play in Stockton last year. And I asked him about their video sessions. And typically, coaches show what they want the players to see, point out what they want them to do, and after about 5 minutes, the players shut it off. I mean, those players have seen it and done it. They've been told what to do. They've stopped listening. So I brought up this idea of, well, just ask them, what would you do? What can we do better? What would you change? Let them tell you what to do, and they'll do it better than you will. So one of the things this morning, how many of you watched the Oilers game and remember the play where Draisaitl on the power play carried the puck up the ice, passed it back, Lenny Barry thought he was going to get it, and it went to McDavid, and he scored a goal. Do you remember that play?
No. Is that the one where he cut?
Yeah.
No?
Okay. I listened to the post-game show. They interviewed Lenny Barry. He indicated he never knew that it was going to happen. He just said he didn't even know the guy was behind him. Now, I don't know if he was lying or not, because we argued about it. I asked them, Coach, do you think the coach taught them that? They practiced that? Or did they just do it? The two of them said, let's do this. And I emailed 3 Western League coaches, shared the clip, asked them the same question. They all thought they were taught that. The coach knew about it. I didn't think so. I think great players, good players, they're told, they won't be told what to do as often, and they're very creative. They'll do their stuff on their own. Anyway, this American League coach, the best video session they had was they split them up into everybody's unit. They played some video on the power play. They had them write about what they liked, what could be done better. Not just, it wasn't their team necessarily, it might have been. And it was like this. They broke up into groups of 5 and said, then they appointed a spokesman to speak on behalf of the group. At the end of the season, in the postseason interviews, they said, the players said that was the best thing they ever did. So most of the coaching in that league And this coach I talked to, he played in that league, and he played in Europe for 12 years. You shut coaches out very quickly, very early. And at the NHL level, I'd be asking him so many questions. I wouldn't be telling him a thing. Because even though I played a pretty high level, nobody can do what they're doing today. I can't imagine any of those coaches understanding the quick thinking that's going on. So,
Yeah, they definitely have an advantage there.
yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I think what we'll do, Wally, is open up. You mentioned some questions from the kids. We'll open it up to some questions from the boys.
Okay.
And basically, we just we start at one end of our roster. The boys know when their turn is next, and maybe they can fire some questions away at you. I know
Okay.
they're probably dying to pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with Larson today. One of our goalies.
I really have a question.
What's that?
Not really sure what to ask.
Oh, you don't have one today?
I got something for him. I'm gonna coach him. I had to scout for the national women's team, and I never played goal, and I don't know, coaches, whether you had much say in. I trust the goalie coach to pick the goalies that are going to be on the team. But over the years, having to scout and look at goalies, I've got one bit of advice, and it's a joke, but it's not a joke. And I want you to interpret it for me. And my advice to you is, it's not dodgeball. What does that mean?
It's dodgeball. You kind of gotta dodge it. Goalies, can't really dodge it. Gotta save it. Stop everything.
And I find scouting, I expect you to stop the first shot. You to be in position for the shot. If you stop the second, I'm going to look at you. You stop the third, I'm probably going to keep you. Now, dodgeball, they're moving too much. They're not set. They're not ready for the shot. They're not reading the play. And I think that's one thing about the Flames goalie, Markstrom. They talk about his poise, his positioning. And to me, goaltending is all about your stance and positioning and letting the pucks hit you. But right now, there's so many, the goalies today are so taught and so coached on technique. They're doing the technique. They're playing dodgeball with the technique. They're not stopping pucks like they could. And so that's my take on it from the little bit of knowledge I've got. Glad you didn't have the question, because I like his answer, Coach. He got it.
Yeah, they're a smart bunch.
Appreciate where you are when the puck shot. Be stable enough to be able to react to that shot and where the puck goes, and be competitive enough to battle for the third save. Okay, next question.
What has been the most important part of your career so far, or moment?
From a hockey point of view, I'd say important that I think the most satisfying, there's two things that the most exciting experience was winning the Olympic gold medal and being an assistant coach in the 2002 Olympics with the women team. We lost every game against the USA that year. Now, I don't know how many of you guys you weren't even born yet when that
4 years old.
Yeah.
You're 4 or 5.
Yeah. But what happened in that game, we lost every game all year. And we knew why we would lose because we were training all year while we played exhibition games. We didn't start to taper or reduce our training to peak perform until 6 weeks before Salt Lake City. We had to trust our scientists, sports scientists, about how we were training and preparing physiologically. We sacrificed winning. Well, in that first game, against the Americans in the gold medal game, we had 8 penalties in a row, and we ended up ahead 1-0. We ended up winning the gold medal. The most satisfying thing was, the biggest lesson I got was coaching that team all year, knowing they lost the gold medal in 1998 and being all involved with that program for 4 years to winning the gold medal in 2002, the preparation that had to go into it at that level, that was the most exciting experience. The most valuable experience for me, my first year of coaching a sport. It was high school football. And I'll tell you, the story is pretty significant for the coaches in particular. But I played with the national team. I quit playing pro hockey, got a job in the separate system. I got a job in special education, working with slow learners in high school that just had to be with their age group but learn life skills. And I got transferred, offered a job in St. Mary's High School, which is a football school in the day in Calgary. It was a huge football school. When I walked into the phys ed office, I introduced myself. I had a phys ed degree, and I didn't go in to say I'd coach anything, but I just wanted to introduce myself because I was going to teach social studies and still a little bit of special ed because the program transferred to that school. And I went in the phys ed office, and the department head was on the phone saying, "No, we're not going to have a junior team, Mr. Semkuli," the head of the athletics in the public and separate school system. I just grabbed the coach by the shoulder. I said, "I'll coach." I mean, I'd come to a school that was a reputed sports school, particularly in football at the time, and it still is very competitive in football. But like the fool I was, I took the job. He had the phone and he said, "Oh, we're going to have a team. We've got a coach now." He gave me 6 footballs. That's all I had. I had no assistants. I had to coach football. I played 6-man in Saskatchewan. I never played 12. Never coached 12.
So all you can do is hit finish.
And I
You're gonna wait
inherited
once it's done. Oh, come on.
this team, and I had to find some people to help. And there was a couple staff volunteers with a little bit of experience, but it was cold turkey. First game of the year, this was my most satisfying coaching experience ever. I value it more than anything. First game, we lost like 47-0. And after a weekend, play football Friday, show up Monday, have a noon hour players meeting, always on Mondays, sort of to set up the week for practice, bring their lunches. Well, I pull into this classroom, and they're sort of double-seated, 47 of them. And their heads were down, depressed, upset. And I looked at them, and I just said to them, I said, "Look, you guys, I don't know a damn thing about football. And that's a fact. But I'm going to get better, and so will you. And I worked hard at it. I got better. I talked to people. I got a playbook from the University of Calgary from a guy I played hockey with who played with them. And I really worked hard at it. And we got better and better. And in the final game, we never won a game. 0-7. We were up 15-7 on the undefeated team in the last game of the year. That's how much we improved. 47 kids started the season. Everybody played. I rolled them. I might have had, 24 on offense and 24 on defense, but they all got to play. And at the end of the year, that philosophy and that improvement, I'll take that, with me for the rest of my life. Is coach's job is to transmit belief and build you up, not pull you down, and not try to win the game, but learn from losing, and we sure did. So I don't know if that answers you. I haven't scored a hat-trick goal, or, I was on the ice in a benefit game with Gretzky and Orr at the same time. That's sort of what I talk about in a two truths and a lie story, but it's a coaching story more than it is a playing story. But okay, another question.
And you said that along the lines of every opportunity or every mistake is an opportunity to learn, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You guys had 47 of them in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Reed's next.
What's your favorite memory from coaching the women's team?
Coaching the women's team, there's so many. I've got one that I'll share with you that you'll all be interested in, and she wouldn't mind me sharing it, but it's sort of a leadership story. When I coached the Olympic Oval team, the first year I coached it, the Olympics were on, so the Olympic players were in Father Bauer. We were at the Olympic Oval all year as a team that was going to compete for the national championship. We only had 2 players that were eligible to play for us when the Olympics were over, Haley Wickenheiser and Jennifer Botterill. So Wickenheiser and Botterill, after the Olympics, came over and played with us. I only had 2 of them. And we won the national championship, beating Ontario in the final, who had 9 Olympians. So that's not the story I'm telling. The story I'm telling you is Wickenheiser. For the next year and a half, after that championship, I rolled the lines in that final game. And we went into overtime, and she wasn't on the ice for the winning goal that we scored. I rolled the lines. And at the end of the game, I stood with her by the team picture and looked at her and said, "You didn't think we would win, did you, Haley?" She said, "No, I didn't." I said to her, "Remember this. It's not the best player that wins. It's the best team that wins." And I could tell more stories about the ups and downs of coaching her with that Oval team, to the point where I kicked her off the team, and I wasn't going to keep her because she spoke out about not being on the ice enough in front of everybody. Cassie Campbell was my captain. She rolled her eyes when this happened in a game when I kicked Haley off the team, but eventually she came around. I had a sign in my office that I borrowed from a speed skating coach, and it said, kids could see it, players could see it when they walked in, and a gold medal is a wonderful thing. But if you're not good enough with it, you're never going to be good enough without it. See, you've got to be able to lose and learn from losing. It's not about about the championship. It's about the journey. Wickenheiser uses that quote in every one of her talks and refers to me in that situation. So with all the hell we went through, when we were on the ice before the gold medal ceremony, she came over and hugged me. And we weren't exactly what you call buddies, but she said, thank you, couldn't have done it without you. And I think we couldn't have done it without that philosophy. That was just so important. Okay, that's that story.
Like, with you being so successful in your coaching, what do you think something you did differently to help you kind of like be more successful than other coaches like this?
Well, I think for the coaches here, is your job, coach, is to transmit belief. Your teacher's job is to transmit belief. And too often, teachers and coaches pigeonhole you, and they don't allow you to blossom or find your niche. And I think that's the one thing, is I transmit belief in the team and the importance of the team, probably more than anybody I know. And I can brag about national championships in ringette, female hockey, provincial championships in football, city championship in football and hockey, Olympic gold medals, an AJHL championship with the Calgary Canucks back in the day. That philosophy.
That's the last time they won, wasn't it, Wally?
1991.
I don't know if it was the last time they won. No, they won after that because Don Phelps took over and they won the national championship. I'm sorry, we won the AJHL, not the national championship, the AJHL. I really, that philosophy behind coaching, I think, is so important. If you don't believe you can do it, you ain't going to do it. And the coach, the teacher, is the one that gets you excited about what you're doing. So it's not about how smart you are. It's about how you are smart. And a coach has to find that out. A teacher has to find that out. And this morning, a principal of a school evaluated his grade 2 teacher. She was discovering how smart the kids were by the way she taught them. Asking questions. Not writing a test and saying you're smart, you're dumb because you got a high score or a low score. Okay?
Who is your favorite player to coach of your entire career? Do you have one or is there multiple?
I'd have to think about that. You know, I really found, I just like coaching everybody. I never found one player easier. I always thought players were sort of a little separate from me. I found them all. I could easily talk about the more difficult ones like Haley. I know that Cassie Campbell was the best captain I've ever seen in hockey. We talked about her this morning because one of the principal of the school shared an article today with us. And I printed it off. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. No, you can't. But it's called The Captain's Class. The Captain's Class. It's all about good captains. But Cassie, you have to earn the players' respect. I feel the players respected me, all of them. But I had to earn it. You can't demand it. You've just got to do things consistently to earn it. Cassie knew what a team meant. She wasn't the most talented player. In 1998, Cassie Campbell was a 7th defenseman on the women's national team in the Nagano Olympics. And she made the she made the World Championship in the year 2000 as a forward. Nobody thought she would make the team again because she was a 7th D, and a veteran already. When she came in and making it as a forward to my office, I congratulated her. She broke down and cried, said, I want to play defense. But she was the captain of the Olympic team in the next 3 Olympics. And her leadership, I could tell stories about it. It wasn't that one player's easier to coach, but there were players that the internal leadership and external leadership that she brought, you can't measure. Same as your team. There's some of you that rub off on others, some that are natural, and it's not your best player necessarily. And we argued today, we questioned McDavid as a captain because he's yelling at guys to get off the ice so he can get more ice time. He's showing bad body language on the ice. And we talked about captains, the influence they have on the team. And I would say Cassie was the best captain I had. She made my job easier. Every player, to me, you have to figure out how to coach them. They're all different. They're all individual. I really can't say there was a favorite one to coach. But
Who was your favorite sprinter?
Come on, Gunner.
You were the best sprinter I had. And it was good. Coaching track and field, coaching an individual sport. I coached Derek. I didn't know much about track, but I studied a lot. He was just damn fast. He had the fast twitch muscle, and he was a good athlete. So it's just recognizing and trying to get them to do things that'll make them better. But I think the buy-in from the players doesn't just come from you. It comes from the leaders who support you to buy in along with them. And boy, when you look at your team and how successful it might be on the ice or off the ice, I think the fact you guys are doing what you're doing, you're winning right now. Because when all is said and done, I can't imagine what you'll all be doing in 20 years, but it'll be good stuff.
Probably hanging on to being a fast sprinter 20 years ago.
My question is, what do you miss most about hockey? Like, specifically?
There's two sides of. I have to say, I miss the camaraderie of playing, just being with the guys, being in the team, being a part of a group. You've all got a challenge. You've got a score clock. You're led as a group to pull together, and I think I was the captain on every team I played for except the national team. And I didn't want to be. I just naturally felt what you had to do to win was be a good person and do things the right way and work hard and treat people with respect, treat one another with respect. And I think that now, Kyle, what was that question again? I might have gone off track.
What do you miss, like, specifically about playing the sport yourself?
Well, the camaraderie about playing, and right now, I'm enjoying the sport more than ever in a different way. The thing for me, Kyle, will amaze you. When I knew I was going to quit playing and started coaching, I get more satisfaction out of coaching than I do out of playing. I enjoy my life more now than I did as a player. And I enjoy hockey more now, in a broader way now.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
What's kept you a part of the game for this long?
Pardon me?
What has kept you a part of the game for this long?
It's That's a really good question. I think it's sort of a love of the game because you had success with it. It builds your own self-esteem with the success you've had. And you care about the game because you know the game, not just hockey, but the game and sport just makes you a better person. And when you live that, like right now, I feel the reason I stayed alive after my heart attack in 2007, where I was told out, when they released me from the hospital, the specialist stood at the foot of my bed and I woke up and I looked at them and said, what do you staring at me for? She says, well, we wanted to let you know before you went home, you had a 2% chance of living. And that in itself, I think hockey's been the thing that's keeping me alive today and more than ever than anything. So it's a love of the game, and you can love the game in many different ways. You can be a fan and love it. You can be a player and love it. You can be a coach and love it. And it's sure nice to love it when you can't do any of it anymore. It's the game itself. You love sports because it really saved me growing up as a child. Made me who I am.
Yeah. So, like, when analyzing your clips, like, what players stand out to you as being the best at, like, the little things?
Well, there's sort of different levels of video. Like when you said which players stand out, if you're a coach, you notice the ones that aren't doing things right. So the problem with that is coaches tend to point that out and tell you what you're doing wrong. And one of the words in coaching is never use the word don't. Just ask them the question, what would you do differently? But when I watch video, of course, like all of you, you watch McDavid, you watch the superstars. And so when I watch video, during the last year's playoffs, I videotaped individual players. I taped two players who were spectacular for me because of their skill and hockey sense. Can you guess who they were in the playoffs? Anybody here? Who did you watch in the playoffs that had extreme skill, but as important to the skill was using it?
Dylan Dubé.
Miro Heiskanen.
Nathan McKinnon.
Okay. The players that I focused on with the number one player of all in the playoffs was Pettersson, because he had extreme skill, but he could make plays. Today, watching Crosby, he makes the players around him better. He has extreme skills. And the other player in the playoffs last year, the IQ of Patrick Kane with the puck is amazing. So I see that, but as a coach, I'm trying to say, how can you get players to do that? And the way to do it is think about it. They think about it. They think so fast. We don't know how fast they think. And I'm more interested in affecting a player to get better at what he's doing. Okay.
Willing?
First off, do you know Bob Tuff?
Very well.
That's my uncle.
Good. You got it.
My question was, if you could change something in your whole career and go in the past and change it, what would it be?
You know, honestly, it'd be nothing. I'm just so happy with the way things have gone. You can't choose. You don't know. You don't know whether you're going to win or lose, or you're going to die today or tomorrow. I just feel blessed for everything that I tried to do. I wonder about things like, I wonder if I was a second generation Canadian. In other words, my father was born here and I was raised here and had more confidence in myself because growing up as a Ukrainian immigrant, back in the day, there was a lot of discrimination when I grew up, and I witnessed it. I was a part of that. It's almost like black like me, and back in my day, it was Ukrainian like me. And it wasn't as bad as the issues today. We weren't getting killed, but I know my father, working on the section, in his second job, was really abused by the foreman that he worked for, which was, basically a white Anglo-Saxon, Canadian-born person. So I think that I wonder about how I would have maybe chosen hockey and gone that route, but I don't think I'd be as satisfied with what I'm doing today.
So my question is, what sparked your love for coaching?
I think the curiosity, you could, instead of just helping yourself and your team, you can help as a player. You can help every one of you to be better than you were. And experimenting with things and those things working get you more excited about it. And I think that the spark of love for coaching was that I'm a teacher. I think that was, if I was to be, I was born to teach, and good coaches are teachers. And that sparked my love. That I wasn't going to coach, but I took that football team on. That experience, how I approached it, I learned more from coaching than I do from playing. You are teaching your coaches more now than they're teaching you. When they're done the end of this season, they may not know it or realize it, but they're going to learn things about what they could do differently. Just like you playing hockey, you're learning, and I think every teacher is learning something every day, and we can learn from students and players more than what we can offer.
So you were obviously pretty good at just whatever you did throughout your entire career. What if you could have done better, just improved that more throughout your life or in hockey?
I think number one, when I was playing and when I was coaching, I was too busy just doing it. I never read. In other words, I never spent time studying about coaching, studying about different ways and different ideas of teaching. I just did it. So I wish I had read more. I wish I had learned to think more when I was in school so I could think better, because now I think better than I ever thought. And actually, I've been informed by neurologists when I did neurological rehab from my heart attack, the one side of my brain has become much more functional. The memory side, in terms of the concrete, sequential, factual numbers thing, but the creative side is growing. And I do wish I read more sooner than later, because we spend so much time right now not working, not actively coaching, learning. I wish I learned more as I was doing it. reading is the number one thing I would recommend. Get hooked on it. And I took notes today about teaching, and the job of a coach is to stimulate, and a teacher is to stimulate curiosity. So think about what you're doing, why you're doing it. And I know girls, they're more curious than guys about what are you doing this for? Why are you doing this? I was a guy, I just did it. So I didn't learn as much as I could have. And I think we've got a lot to learn from female coaches and female as a whole in all walks of life as leaders in society or co-workers or employees or managers.
When you're trying to build your team, like at tryouts, what makes a player stand out to you?
Well, having been a scout, I had to develop a scouting outline of traits. And every NHL team has a scouting staff, and they have a program called RinkNet, where all scouts have to complete an evaluation after every game. And there's a definition of traits of what to look for. So when I went to Japan, and Dave King got fired from the Flames, he took over the men's team. And I was still working with, the selection process. And I came up with 3 things that I evaluate in a player. And the first thing is skill, which sticks out and is easy to see. Now, the funny thing here is nobody judges skill without the puck. Playing defense, nobody evaluates that well. Nobody teaches it well. Even today, it's forgotten. It takes special teaching of special skills and understanding that if you play defense, you got to know when to pressure, know when to contain. It's a completely different ball of wax. When you're on offense, you're creating time, you're creating space, you're being deceptive. They're 2 completely different things. So skill is number 1. Hockey IQ, sense, decision making, positioning, reacting is making the play at the right time, being available, getting it open. Are you smart on the ice? The most important trait with the national team, and even if I was drafting in junior hockey, you have to have the skill. You have to be smart. The skill will stick out. But the thing that I think you've got to judge most, and I double the score on the 3rd trait for the the Olympic program, because anybody who makes the Olympic team has to be crazy. The female Olympic team has to be crazy. And I tell the parents that when I met with them prior to an under-18 camp, and telling everybody their kids aren't going to make it, it gets quite a reaction after a while, I say, because they're not crazy enough. What you have to do, the preparation, the practice, the time, we don't want you for 1 Olympics. We want you for a minimum of 2. Well, that's 8 years of your life. Year-round for no money. Maybe some engagements. So you got to be crazy. So I call it the intangibles. How hard you're willing, how much you're willing to give up, how dedicated you are to do what it takes. So intangibles are the little things, the work ethic. So when I scout, I look at the player who back checks hard, the upper echelon players. I watch the skilled players and see if they're staying out too long. And they'll lose marks when I watch them, when I evaluate them. But not everybody appreciates the scale that I choose. But basically, when it gets down to the program of excellence camps that some of you may have been to, the last 3 picks are the hardest. Everybody makes the first ones. There's no arguments. And the last 3 picks, you could take 3 hours arguing about them. But I make them give a score out of 5 for skill, thinking, toughness, for each of the 3 players, 3 traits for the remaining 3 players that they're looking at, or the remaining 6 that they're looking at. And I say, just go by your numbers. We could argue all night about it. Go by your numbers. And it's worked very well for us. The goaltender, I don't know if he's still on or not, but I'm going to share a true story about Alberta female camp. They have these zone camps, and what they do is they used to have you pick a team from your zone. So now the South Zone was so weak, and the Far North Zone was so weak, they decided to half a province draft 3 teams. And when we drafted the female team, I was working with Calgary females. We had the last pick of the day. And it was for a goalie, the last goalie. So the goalie will appreciate this. And they asked me, the staff, we had the last pick for a goalie. And I said to them, flip a coin. Because I didn't know. And that girl made the team. She wasn't the starter, but she did really well. But she ended up 3 years later playing in the Canada Winter Games Alberta team and winning half of the games. Didn't play in the gold medal victory one, Canada Winter Games, from the flip of a coin. So it just shows you how little we really know about people and their motivation and what's going to take them to get there. So just transmit belief so they believe in themselves and push themselves, and you'll get to where you want to be and whatever you want to do. So skill, thinking, and toughness. I think they're picking players with hockey IQ before they're picking players with skill and toughness. The toughness part falls into, it fits into the intangibles, your ability to compete. You can be small, but compete and battle and win races to pucks. So you don't need to be big like Lucic. And Lucic, incidentally, somebody jokingly brought up his name as one of those players. Well, I have a video highlight of Lucic forechecking a guy. He could have run him through the boards, and he got stick on puck, created a free puck, and made a play. So here's a big guy back in the day who might have ran a guy through the end boards, playing the game of hockey with his brain. And that was, to me, I use that at checking clinics. So that you realize, you don't hit a guy, you get the puck free with a stick on puck first, and if you have to squeeze him off the puck, fine. But body checking, to me, literally, it's gone the way of the dodo bird in the game. It's not a very important tactic. In fact, it can be harmful to the game today. The NHL, there's less body checking going on than ever, more than less than junior hockey right now.
My question is, since you became involved in hockey, have you noticed any large differences in the game or anything about the game since when you began to today's age?
Oh, remarkable change. There's almost sort of 3 tiers of change. The old school day, and I'll talk the guys' game. The skilled six-man league was skilled, but it was rough and tough. So what's changed most is the way battling and fighting and intimidation was truly affecting the outcome of games. And the need for an intimidator, I think it's still there. It's changed to the degree now where they all want an equalizer. Every team still needs that guy that will stand up for somebody. They won't take advantage of you because that mentality still goes on. But the biggest change, the speed and the skill of the players, like guys in the day, they could talk about Bobby Orr and Gordie Howe and all these famous players from that generation just would be too slow in executing today and thinking today. So the biggest change I see is in hockey IQ, decision making, the plays that are made, the quickness of them happening and the decisions. You know, since my heart attack, I literally have to slow motion video clips. One of our coaches, Tim Bothwell, played in the NHL. He sees things as they happen. I don't. I see some things, but I have to slow things to double check what I see. And that McDavid clip coming up late on the power play breakout, it's one of the clips that we played over and over this morning to talk about it. I changed my opinion of it after talking to Tim Bothwell. So the speed of the mind to think and execute is huge. The third tier of change related to that is the game is not north-south anymore. Stay in your lane, up and down. Back in my day, there were coaches who actually had clotheslines attached to the wingers so they couldn't leave the wide lane they were in.
That's the Howie Meeker days.
Yeah. And that coach of the Estevan Bruins eventually came and coached the Calgary Centennials, who would be the equivalent of the Hitmen today. But that's what the thinking was. Now today, the game is not... This is a story that will interest everybody. How many of you, and Derek, I'll ask you this, how many of you use F1, F2, F3 languaging when coaching? What do you do, Derek?
All the time, but we use it in the defensive zone as well.
Okay. So you use 1, 2, 3? Okay. So the new change, Sean, is... I always say if you can count to 3, you can play hockey. Now I say the biggest change, if you can count to 5, you can play hockey. You don't know who's going to be first. On a breakout, there's a clip where Montreal, 2 defensemen, Shea Weber, they were on a 2-on-1 rush. Weber scored. They were 1 and 2. So the game today is played with interchange. You think the game, you interchange position, and when you tell kids what to do and stay on your wing, and you handcuff their capacity to think and react quickly. That's the biggest thing in the game today. I complain about the female game because it's still north-south. There's no switching of positions and free play. They don't play hockey. They work hockey. They do what they're told. And I think at the NHL level, they do what they think, and they should, because they're that good. And you got to let them do it. And you can do this with 7-year-olds. So coaches, all of you, can you see me at all here now?
Just your picture.
Oh, just my, can you? I'm going to ask you all to hold your hand up in front of your faces in a claw. Everybody. Now, no pointing at me. Pointing at the screen. Pointing at the screen. Okay, everybody? Now, Your middle finger, look at it. That's F1. Your third could be F2. Your first finger could be, your middle finger is the first person on the puck. 2 and 3 are the first and third. Your thumb and little finger are the D. Now move it to the right. Move it to the left. Imagine you're forechecking. You're reading F1. F2 is width and depth. He's got a chance to recover. So I do that every coaching clinic. I don't know how you forecheck, Sean. That's all I would do. The coach in Stockton, who's on our Zoom call, he uses a two-man pressure. He has 3 words. That's his forecheck. Pressure, possession, play. That's his system. Now I'm going to tell you a story, a true story at the Olympics, 2002. I knew all the NHL coaches. I had done coaching clinics with them, worked at the Program of Excellence with them, Wayne Fleming, Jacques Martin, Ken Hitchcock, and the head coach was Pat Quinn. And this was in first 4 days at the village. There's a knock on my door in the dorm in our residence. Wayne Fleming, and this is a true story, knocks on my door and says, "Wally, would you come in? We're having an argument." And this is an amazing story. And I said, "You guys got to be kidding. You're going to ask for a female assistant coach to come in and give you guys advice?" And I go in the room, and Hitch and Jacques Martin and Wayne are standing. I sit beside Pat Quinn on the bed. He's chewing on a cigar. Now, Pat Quinn's an old school common sense guy. He has a law degree, but I know he's got a common sense to him, having been an ex-player. And the other 3 hadn't played a lot. They've coached a lot. They've done all the clinics and everything you can think of. So I said to them, "What the hell do you guys want?" And Wayne Fleming said, "Well, Wally, how would you forecheck? Visualize this, players. If you lose the draw in their end." Now, I could ask the question and embarrass the coaches. Anyway, I embarrassed the coaches with the answer I gave them. I said, "Are you kidding me, Wayne?" He looked at me and, "You're going to tell the best world players in the world how to forecheck when you lose a draw? They'll figure it out. FIO, that's what you tell them. Figure it out. The closest player has to get on the puck. Second player, third player, width and depth. They'll figure it out." Now, these are NHL coaches at the Olympics. He said, "Well, what about the blue line?" I said, "It's the same thing." And I explained it. If you're coaching college, they might send the winger on the lost draw, on the inside or the outside. You can structure it at college when you have 5 practices a week. I don't think you do it as, you don't let them figure it out, maybe you should. Wayne said, "Well, just wait." And he ran out of the room. He came back with a binder. He announced, "Oh, we've got it here, you guys. We've got it. It's in the binder we sent to the players." Now, I don't think the players even opened the binder all season. I said, "Wayne, they're not going to have time to turn to page 54 on the bench to find out about how to forecheck when you lose a draw. You got the best players in the world. They'll figure it out and let them play." And I think Pat Quinn was thankful I was there, because it was 3 against 1. And I was embarrassed. Like, I lost my, it's not about how much they know. It's about understanding the players know better than them what to do at that level. And you can give them too much to do, you can tell them too much. You can overcoach. That, to me, is the epitome of overcoaching. I shared this story with Tom Rennie in Hockey Canada because he's been at World Championships. He says, yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. And boy, I'm telling you, that shocks me. So I'm not impressed with how much coaches know and how much they want to tell they know. Figuring it out and ask questions, especially with those guys, is better. And I don't know if Sean and Derek remember the goal that they scored in the gold medal game, the men's team. Pronger was crossing the blue line with the puck, and then the forwards went in ahead of him. He threw the puck to Mary Lemieux in the middle. He sort of passed to the middle lane. Lemieux looked like he was going to stop the puck, but he left it his stick, and he let it go to the far winger who scored a goal. It was a 3-1 goal. He did it on his own. I don't think he just did it. Something that I said, oh my God, what did he just do? Just like I watch NHL games today and say, what did he do? And after the game, the gold medal, I was down in the dressing room and I talked to Wayne and I said, Wayne, just like you practiced, eh? And that's my point. Do things you're creatively think of. And we don't let you do that often enough. And we're not just turning you loose and saying take all kinds of crazy risks, but boy, when you're a robot, and I think we've got too much robotization in the game and the female side for sure.
Yeah, you definitely want to let them be creative.
Yeah.
Scoots?
Yeah, my question is, what is it like coaching at the Olympic level?
Well, the first time in Nagano, head coach of the Japanese women, the first thing that opened my eyes was lining up and being in the back of the Japanese Olympic team. You lined up in rows of 6. We were about 30 deep. I was in the 30 deep row because you're lined up by height. So I was one of the tallest coaches with Team Japan. I remember that like it was yesterday. Every Olympics, like I experienced Salt Lake as an assistant coach. I went to Japan and I had to deal with culture. Right to the dying end, I had to deal with culture because there's so much that went on behind the scenes. It's another book and another story to tell. But in 2002, what I learned was it's a process. The whole season is getting better at something and making improvement. And I really appreciate that you can lose every game all year and win a gold medal when you stick with the process. And that's what I'm doing today in minor hockey. Everybody's trying to win the game today, and they're not trying to develop the players to build the team to win the game at the end of the season. And realize that you still might not win, but you're going to be a hell of a lot better person for it. And you'll be a lot better team than you would have been by unethical coaching, I call it. So,
Gunnar, you're up, buddy.
Well, Wally, I really don't have many questions. I mean, we talked and discussed stuff the other day, and we talk every once in a while. So I really don't. All the stories that you told were stories that I remember seeing you on the bench and watching you in the Olympics, and it's just been a fun journey to watch where you've been. So, and thank you for coming on tonight.
You're welcome, Derek.
And I'm going to keep this simple for you. I'm curious to know in today's game in the NHL, which, in your opinion, who is the best head coach in the NHL today and why?
That's a good question. When I watch hockey now, Sean, I don't watch the ice as much as I watch the bench when players change, and I watch the coaches. And I'm going to generalize about the NHL. NHL coaches are so far ahead of other leagues. I don't see anybody yelling. I see thoughtfulness on the bench. I see players looking at iPads. They know what they've done, and they're looking at it. And I think the best coaches are not saying anything. They might be going over, looking at the iPad and talking to one another about what they might bring up. And to me, the best one is the one who wins the Stanley Cup in the end. The one who teams plays the best all the way down the line. So I really liked the Dallas head coach all year for a few things that he did as a coach on the bench. And he's like a Pat Quinn. He's a player's coach. I saw him one time have to settle a player down who was frustrated. And he showed a little bit of anger, firmness. But I saw him more often than not picking guys up when they needed to be picked up. His composure on the bench, listening to others, his staff. I saw I call it quiet coaching. Those are the best coaches. Back in our day, we always talked about how great a coach Scotty Bowman was, and he's a thinker. And he's still sort of the epitome of a coach in terms of getting the most out of everybody, using his lines. Not a teacher, not a technical guy, not an X and O guy, not a yeller, not a screamer, but he knew who to play and when to play them and create the combinations, and he was able to get the most out of what he had. So I really liked the Flames staff. I know Dave Tippett. I've coached him with the national team. They've got a great staff, but sometimes those guys can't coach because they're dealt a hand of who they have to play. I think what's more important than the coach is the synchronization of this entire organization on the philosophy of letting the process work its way out and build a team. So I don't care if it's football, but we do a lot of talk about coaching and culture. And the culture comes from the coach, but it also is affected by the organization. And to me, what you're doing here, if the North Stars ever decide to do the cooking thing with every team, you'll do more for the culture of hockey in your organization than anybody in the X's and O's. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit going on that can't go on right now, that would be going on right now. But developing a relationship and some degree of respect for one another, that's huge.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, Wally, we've kept you for a while here, and we appreciate so much that you came on and talked to the boys. You've definitely got some interesting perspectives on things, and for Dunner and I, he's known you a heck of a lot longer than I have, but I've always respected your thoughts on the processes, and you've always kept me engaged. So I gotta get these boys off the Zoom so that they can go and finish their schoolwork. But we want to thank you very much for taking the time today, and I'm looking forward to your Thursday mornings that I'll start getting involved in here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I just want to say one last thing before I sign off to the kids. I'd like to apologize for the world that's created today that you're having to live in. And I think playing the sport and doing what you're doing, just become a better leader as an adult when you grow up. so you can make a bigger change in the way things are done. I think there's a lot to be learned, but I got more faith in kids today than young people today because we're starting to realize the infinite capacities that we all have within us. So go for it, guys. Put up with your Zoom learning and what's going on with health issues, and stay the course and keep making a difference in whatever you do. Give it your all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Wally. Appreciate it.
Thank you.